I was the meekest lateral consort in the Eastern Palace. Learning that the favored concubine had died at the crown prince consort's hands, I timidly took in the favored concubine's son, and constantly cautioned Xiaoxian. There are many people in this world you cannot afford to offend. Don't stand out or be conspicuous. Then I handed him a self-defense dagger. Xiaoxian. ? I added. If it truly comes to a last resort, remember to strike a fatal blow. Xiaoxian. Okay. Later, the crown prince finally remembered us and came to ask me, how is that child, Xianer? Thinking of Xiaoxian chasing after assassins with a blade, I replied honestly and timidly. He's very obedient. Welcome to listen to the ancient Chinese romance story. I'm the blogger and I'm Whispers of Phoenix. Now let's start the main story. In my third year of entering the Eastern Palace, the crown prince was summoned south. The crown prince's favorite concubine, Su Lanhui, was pregnant again. Relying on her favor, she made excuses not to pay respects, angering the crown prince consort, who punished her by making her kneel in the snow. Consort Su was frail. She knelt for less than an hour before spotting blood. The crown prince consort refused to let her leave. She only summoned the imperial physician after the woman fainted, but unexpectedly, consort Su was ill-fated, dying with the unborn child. It was the depth of winter. Heavy snow fell, a vast expanse of white covering the trace of blood. My personal maid Nuanchuan lifted the door curtain and came in, bringing a gust of cold wind. Her face was pale, her voice trembling. Madam, consort Su is gone. My fingers, holding the hand warmer, paused slightly, and I lowered my eyelashes without speaking. The crown prince consort came from a noble family, was proud, jealous, ruthless, and vicious, but the crown prince doted on her, indulging her whims. Moreover, she had long given birth to the legitimate heir, her position as solid as a rock. Now that a life had been lost, but the crown prince was not in the residence, who could do anything to her? After a moment of silence in the hall, I stammered. This matter has nothing to do with us, we just need to guard our own mouths. Although the crown prince consort was domineering, I had no sons or daughters, my looks weren't outstanding, and I wasn't favored by the crown prince. I never thought of competing for favor. I honestly kept to my own corner, so we remained peacefully uninvolved. Hearing my words, Nuanchuan softly acknowledged, understood. But thinking of something, her tone unconsciously carried a hint of sympathy. Poor consort Su's child, now that His Highness the Crown Prince isn't here, he probably won't escape disaster. Madam, you have no children of your own, perhaps? Nuanchuan looked up, hesitant to speak further. In this inner palace, not everyone could give birth to a prince. Having a child was a sort of safeguard. An ordinary person would surely seize the opportunity. But I am an assassin. Before entering the Eastern Palace, I was a death guard raised by the third prince Shao Qi to let me lurk successfully within the Eastern Palace. The third prince sent me to the vice minister's residence, making me a bastard daughter. The vice minister Meng had supposedly raised on a country estate. Real or fake wasn't important. What mattered was smoothly inserting me into the Eastern Palace. During a palace banquet that year, my nominal father said to the crown prince, Your Highness, this humble minister still has an unmarried daughter at home, the most obedient and sensible. She has long admired Your Highness. The crown prince chuckled lightly, but his tone carried authority. How could vice minister's beloved daughter be suitable as my concubine? That was a refusal. My nominal father broke out in cold sweat, but dared not say more, just smilingly changed the subject. Learning the news, I was about to head back to the estate, but encountered the crown prince as I left the palace. Your subject's daughter pays respects to His Highness the Crown Prince. I curtsied, my expression docile. A eunuch nearby recognized my identity and whispered to the crown prince, This is the younger daughter of Vice Minister Meng's family, Meng Qiwa. I didn't look up, but I keenly sensed a burning gaze fall upon my head. My heart jumped violently, and I lowered my head further. Could he have discovered my identity was fake? Fortunately, he hadn't. After a long while, I finally heard the man's deep voice. Tell Vice Minister Meng I grant it. Grant what? I didn't understand at the time, but upon returning to the residence, I was packed off and sent into the Eastern Palace. I've lived here ever since for 3 years now. The Crown Prince was busy with official duties, had a beautiful wife and concubines, and naturally paid me no attention. Fortunately, I didn't mind either. The days were leisurely, and I earned silver for nothing. Truly a heavenly assignment. But I never forgot I was here under orders, pretending to live an ordinary life. My sole purpose was to assassinate the crown prince one day. How could I raise his son? Moreover, the favorite concubine's child was bound to be a thorn in the crown prince consort's side. I wouldn't get involved. So I just said quietly, "What is destined to be yours will come, I do not force it." Nguyen looked regretful. Understood. But the next day when I went out to admire the snow, I unexpectedly bumped into that child. Because of Consort Su's death, the maids who served her had also been punished. The once bustling Eastern Palace was instantly filled with tension. I walked a loop and was about to return to my quarters. Passing Lan Yu Hall, the door was wide open, and I saw the boy with reddened eyes at a glance. The boy was about 8 or 9 years old, standing bewildered and at a loss. His black hair was disheveled, his face deathly pale. Hearing footsteps, he turned his head anxiously, his gaze meeting mine. Unlike usual, he didn't greet me but showed hostility like a small beast. I glanced out of the corner of my eye. Not far away, the crown prince consort's people were approaching. Why so unlucky? Just as they arrived? Before I could turn and leave, Xiaoxian in front of me suddenly strode closer, grabbed my skirt, knelt down, his thin back trembling like he was clutching the last straw. "Aye, foolish boy. Grabbing at any doctor in an emergency." Precisely at that moment, the crown prince consort arrived with her entourage. Seeing this scene, the woman adorned with pearls and jade narrowed her beautiful eyes, lifted her chin slightly. "Lateral consort Meng, what are you doing here?" I turned around, curtsied and said timidly, "Your subject heard Consort Su was gone and came kindly to see this child, but he was rude to me, truly annoying." Probably not expecting me to turn the tables, the one clutching my skirt noticeably stiffened. I sensed it but ignored him. "Oh." The crown prince consort stared at my trembling eyelashes, feigning fear. Perhaps thinking of my obedient and docile nature in the 3 years since entering the residence, her eyes flickered slightly. She bent down slightly, her crimson-nailed hand lifted my chin, her gaze sweeping over my plain, unremarkable face. I let her look. The atmosphere hung strangely tense. After a long while she released her hand. "Since he offended you, then you may punish him." "Thank you, Crown Prince Consort." I replied neither humbly nor arrogantly. Before me, the woman's gloomy gaze swept over the back of Xiao Xian's lowered head as she led her people away. Only after she left did I finally relax. Nguyen came over to help me up, somewhat confused. "Madam, your words just now." I looked down at Xiao Xian, who was still staring at his toes, my mind filled with the hot potato that had fallen into my hands. Outwardly, I could only brace myself and say, "Come with me." Hearing this, Xiao Xian's hand, hanging at his side, clenched tightly, but finally relaxed, and he stood up to follow me. The Xiaoxiang Hall where I lived had a large bamboo grove in the rear courtyard, a lush green even in winter at first glance. Xiaoxian followed me into the hall. Inside, charcoal fires were burning, bringing a wave of warmth as we entered. My frozen hands and feet began to thaw. He was still young, just staring straight at me, looking composed, but his reddened eye corners betrayed his fear and nervousness. Seeing this, Nguyen said softly, "This servant will fetch some pastries and tea." With that she withdrew. I cleared my throat, thinking I had to punish him somehow to satisfy the crown prince consort. After racking my brain for a good while, I finally thought of a solution. "From today you will stay here and copy scriptures." After speaking, I expected dissatisfaction and resistance. After all, he used to be a favorite child of the crown prince. Even the crown prince consort treated him kindly on the surface, let alone someone as meek as me. Unexpectedly, the boy lowered his head, seeming to heave a sigh of relief, and complied obediently. "Yes." I glanced at him subtly. Quite obedient. But that wasn't important. Once I sent him away, my face fell instantly. I needed to send this kid away as soon as possible. In less than half a month, the crown prince, far away in the south, heard about what happened in the residence and rushed back post-haste. But his return was ultimately too late. Consort Su's body had already been buried. Such a hasty speed clearly indicated something fishy. But the crown prince only pondered for a moment before tacitly accepting the matter. He only asked about Xiaoxian a few times. Learning the boy was being punished by me to copy scriptures, he came to me that very night. Late at night, candlelight flickered. The man wore dark brocade robes, his features handsome, his steps swift. Probably exhausted from traveling day and night, his face showed signs of fatigue. I stood up and curtsied, saying gently, "Your subject pays respects to His Highness the Crown Prince." His steps stopped in front of me. The man's hand reached out to help me up. I thought he would ask about Consort Su and was preparing my response, but unexpectedly, his voice came to my ear. "In the days I was away, did the Crown Prince Consort give you any trouble?" What? I instinctively looked up, meeting the man's deep, ocean-like eyes, then averted my gaze after a moment. "Not at all." Seeing this, the Crown Prince didn't speak, just stared fixedly at me, a strange emotion flickering in his eyes. After a long while, he finally spoke steadily. "Don't be afraid, I was only asking casually. That child Xianer has lost his mother. He should have been adopted by the Crown Prince Consort, but she is busy raising Jinger and cannot spare the effort. You have no children of your own, so let the child be registered under your name." I was inwardly shocked and quickly said, "Your subject has neither talent nor virtue. I fear I am incapable of raising the young Lord Xian. You have a gentle nature. With the child following you, I can rest assured." The Crown Prince made the final decision. I was silent for a moment. "Understood. You're the one who handed your son over to me. Can't blame me." That night, the Crown Prince did not stay at Xiaoxiang Hall. He had rushed back from the south. Official duties there weren't settled yet. He summoned officials overnight for discussions, busy as a spinning top. The news spread like wildfire through the Eastern Palace by the next morning. The Crown Prince Consort heard that the Crown Prince had registered Xiaoxian under my name but didn't make a scene. Xiaoxian continued obediently copying scriptures at my place. For half a month he was basically silent. He was initially wary of me, but seeing me eat, sleep, and repeat, he relaxed. I leaned on the daybed, glancing at him. The little guy was tightening his jaw, copying scriptures with utmost seriousness. In the vast hall, only the soft rustling of the brush could be heard. I felt troubled. Very troubled. I had no experience teaching children. Thinking of something, I cleared my throat. Not far away, Xiaoxian stopped writing, turned his head, his dark eyes settling on me. After a moment's hesitation, he tentatively asked, "Does Consort Meng have any instructions?" I didn't insist he call me mother. Hearing this form of address, I didn't comment further but said calmly, "There are many people in this world you cannot afford to offend. Now that you are in my hall, you must be well behaved and abide by the rules. Do not stand out or be conspicuous, do you understand?" After I spoke, the light in Xiaoxian's eyes dimmed, the fingers holding the wolf hair brush whitening slightly. "Your son understands." But the next moment, a dagger suddenly appeared before him, startling him. He looked up in shock. I habitually added, "If it truly comes to a last resort, remember to strike a fatal blow." The deep palace was fraught with peril at every step. Kind-hearted and soft people simply couldn't survive. After finishing, I suddenly realized something felt off. This wasn't something a normal consort should say. Sure enough, Xiaoxian froze for a moment. Just as I was thinking how to recover, I saw his eyes brighten as he looked at me, like the moon breaking through clouds. "Your son remembers." Spilled water is hard to retrieve. I glanced at Xiaoxian again. Fortunately, he was young and probably easy to fool. Thinking this, I felt much more settled. I pulled out a book and handed it to him, instructing him seriously. "At your young age, it's the perfect time to strive." Xiaoxian looked down, saw the martial arts inscription on the book cover, and his gaze wavered, rippling like a stone dropped into water. He didn't open it immediately, his lips moving as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. "What's wrong?" Xiaoxian hesitated for a long moment before whispering, "Father prefers poetry and literature." I didn't understand immediately. The Crown Prince liked poetry and literature. What did that have to do with him? Thinking this, I said casually, "You are you, he is he. Naturally, they cannot be confused." Hearing this, Xiaoxian lifted his head and stared at me in a daze. He had entered the school early, studied the 6 arts of a gentleman, but his mother always demanded he memorize texts, neglecting other pursuits. Seeing him silent, I took it as agreement and said, "In a few days I will find you a martial arts master." "All right." The boy lowered his eyelashes, hiding the churning emotions in his eyes. But finding a martial arts master wasn't easy, mainly because hiring a martial arts master costs money, and the crown prince consort wouldn't allow it. My eyes rolled and a flash of inspiration struck my mind. A few nights later, a tall figure leaped into my bedchamber like a ghost, eagerly asking, "Have you obtained some proof to topple the crown prince?" I looked left and right. Not exactly. Ningzhou, also a death guard, frowned. "Then why did you summon me?" "I've thought of a brilliant plan." Having rehearsed the story all afternoon, I was exceptionally persuasive. In my 3 years in the Eastern Palace, I observed the favored concubine and the crown prince consort as rivals. Now the favored concubine is dead by the crown prince consort's hand, and the crown prince did nothing, causing the favored concubine's son to turn against his father. This is the perfect time for us to exploit the situation. I rambled on, my tone earnest, full of loyal fervor. Ningzhou's eyes grew brighter and brighter. "You make sense. How should I cooperate?" I swallowed, said seriously. "He lacks a martial arts master. You come secretly in private to teach him some martial arts, so he can protect himself in the future. No, I mean become a great asset to us." "Who would have thought you seem honest but have such a wicked heart." Ningzhou praised greatly. I smiled meekly. If he hadn't worked for free, my dagger would have flown out. From then on, Ningzhou became Xiaoxian's martial arts master. He came with the moon, secretly training him in martial arts. Xiaoxian didn't understand at first, but I remained steady as an old dog, calmly explaining. "These days, masters are all eccentric." Xiaoxian believed it. "So that's how it is." Days passed like this. Xiaoxian attended school during the day, practiced martial arts at night. After the incident with consort Su, the crown prince stayed in the capital for a few days. Once things were settled, he went south again, gone for 4 or 5 months. By the time he returned to the capital, it was already summer. Heat steamed. In previous years, ice arrived very late at my place, but this year it arrived surprisingly early. Nuanchuan and Hoitsue were delighted for me. Nuanchuan smiled as she handed me the iced lychees, overjoyed. "Madam, originally the second royal grandson was favored by His Highness the Crown Prince. Now that the favored consort is gone, His Highness should visit us more often." They were maids randomly assigned to me by the Crown Prince after I entered the Eastern Palace. They had no backing and prioritized me in everything. I knew they meant well, but my eyelids twitched, and I felt inexplicably uneasy. Before I could figure out what was wrong, a young palace maid suddenly ran in from outside, flustered. "Lateral consort, madam, it's terrible. The first royal grandson fell off his horse, vomiting blood. They say it was our second highness who did it." "What?" I shot up from my seat, lychees falling to the ground, rolling onto the carpet. When I rushed to the drill ground, it was already chaotic. Palace maids and eunuchs knelt on the ground, faces pale. Imperial physicians huddled together, trembling. I stepped forward to look. The boy lying on the ground had blood seeping from the corner of his mouth, his brows tightly closed. Perhaps in extreme pain, his body trembled slightly. This was Xiao Jing, the crown prince consort's legitimate son. I'd seen him a few times in the Eastern Palace. Spoiled by the crown prince consort, Xiao Jing, though barely 10, had an extremely arrogant temperament and never got along with Xiaoxian. Nearby, Xiaoxian stood rooted to the spot, head lowered, lost in thought. Could he have actually taken my words to heart? To avenge his mother, he directly finished off Xiao Jing? Well, that would make sense. I fell silent for a moment, about to step forward and ask a few questions, when I heard someone shout loudly, "The crown prince consort has arrived." Turning to look, I saw the crown prince consort rushing over urgently. Passing me without a word, she slapped me across the face. I sensed it and suppressed my instinct to dodge, taking the blow squarely. She had clearly used all her strength. My face snapped to the side, burning fiercely. "You wretch. Usually you seem honest, but I never expected you to be a venomous creature, inciting that whore's son to harm my son. If anything happens to my son, I will take your lives." Her vicious voice rang in my ears. I kept my head down, silent, the taste of blood spreading in my mouth. Xiao Xian, who had been silent until then, suddenly stepped in front of me, facing the Crown Prince Consort, saying, "Crown Prince Consort, please investigate clearly. I did not harm my elder brother." His explanation only made the Crown Prince Consort's beautiful eyes blaze even more fiercely. "You lying creature! If you didn't do it, how did my Jinger fall off his horse for no reason?" She raised her hand to strike again, just as the imperial physician came to report. Crown Prince Consort, the royal grandson, suffered a severe fall. Fortunately, his heart meridian wasn't injured. With careful rest, he will recover fully. Hearing this, the Crown Prince Consort coldly snapped. "Then hurry up and prescribe medicine." "Yes." After the physician withdrew, the Crown Prince Consort glanced at Xiao Jing lying on the ground, blood staining his clothes, and her eyes instantly reddened. Her murderous gaze fixed on me, her crimson-nailed hand rose, pointing at me as she cried out hatefully, "Guards!" Meng Qiuya, as a lateral consort, incited royal grandson Xiao Xian to harm the legitimate grandson. "Execute her on the spot with the rod." As soon as the words fell, guards immediately came to drag me away. My face paled and I instinctively struggled. If I died at the Crown Prince Consort's hands, my 3 years of lurking would be meaningless. But the Eastern Palace guards weren't idle either. In moments they surrounded me. I couldn't expose my martial arts skills in front of everyone. Sweating profusely in panic, my mind racing. But the panic blanked my mind. Someone seized my arm and yanked me back hard. Pain shot through my arm. Before I could resist, a kick landed on the back of my knee, forcing me to my knees. An arm-thick rod came crashing down toward me. I instinctively closed my eyes, a dagger slipping into my palm from my sleeve, ready to kill. Suddenly, a voice filled with panic and alarm rang out sharply. "Mother!" Hearing this, I instinctively looked up. The rod whistled down through the air above me. Xiao Xian, shoved to the ground by guards, had pupils that shook violently. At the critical moment, a stern shout was heard. "Hold it!" The rod stopped an inch above my spine. Strands of hair were blown up by the gust of wind and then fell back. My heart, which had leaped into my throat, settled back into place, and I sighed in relief, quickly retracting the dagger. I wasn't afraid of death, but dying like this was truly unjust. Not far away, the Crown Prince arrived, his face as dark as ink, striding over. His gaze swept over the chaotic scene, his voice even colder. "What is the meaning of this?" Seeing him, the Crown Prince Consort's eyes flashed with viciousness, but tears fell on her face. "Your Highness, Xiao Xian harmed our Jinger. Jinger nearly died." Hearing this, the Crown Prince glanced at his eldest son on the stretcher carried by the physicians, his gaze like icy blades piercing Xiao Xian upon seeing the glaring bloodstains. I was helped up by Nuanchuan. I coughed a few times, immediately drawing the Crown Prince's attention. "Your subject truly has no idea what happened. The Crown Prince Consort struck your subject as soon as she arrived." I stated the facts, but the Crown Prince Consort's gaze at me was as if she wanted to devour me alive. The Crown Prince's gaze swept over my swollen cheek, his eyes darkening. Then he questioned those present. "Where is the tutor?" The tutor teaching the royal grandson, Xie Chongting, came from a prestigious family and was proficient in the 6 arts. Hearing this, a palace servant replied tremulously, "Tutor Xie had matters at home and said he would be away for a moment." The Crown Prince's expression grew even grimmer. A clever eunuch beside him raised his voice. "And those present? Did anyone see it happen?" No one answered. The servants all looked down, not daring to breathe loudly. Seeing the stalemate, the Crown Prince Consort wiped her tears and asked tremulously, "Your Highness, under the watchful eyes of everyone, if it wasn't Xianer, how did Jinger fall off his horse and get so grievously injured for no reason? Xiao Duzi, you followed Jinger closely. You speak." She turned her gaze to one person in the crowd. After she spoke, that Xiao Duzi stammered as he spoke, It was the second royal grandson racing horses with the first royal grandson. He accidentally hit the first royal grandson's horse's leg with his whip. That's why the grandson fell." The eunuch speaking had beads of sweat on his forehead, stuttering, trembling all over, seemingly terrified. Hearing this, the Crown Prince Consort glared fiercely at Xiao Xian, murderous intent flashing in her eyes. My gaze darkened. Fortunately, the crown prince didn't immediately pass judgment. Frowning, he asked Xiaoxian, "Xian, you speak. Did this happen?" The thin boy lifted his head, his raven-black lashes trembling slightly, but he said firmly, "Elder brother wanted to race horses with me. I refused, so he tried to whip me. I dodged, and unexpectedly he missed and fell off his horse. Your son speaks truthfully, father, please judge fairly." "Nonsense." The crown prince consort snapped harshly. But Xiaoxian also had servants as witnesses. For a time it was impossible to distinguish truth from falsehood. I thought the crown prince would handle it impartially, but unexpectedly, the man's voice turned cold. "Guards. The lateral consort has failed in teaching her son. Confined for 1 year." Xiaoxian showed disrespect to his elder brother, placed his brother in danger without regard, disregarding brotherly affection. Confined alongside her. "Without my summons, no one is to enter Xiaoxiang Hall." Hearing this suddenly, Xiaoxian's gaze trembled violently, as if he hadn't expected this outcome. I widened my eyes slightly but ultimately said nothing more. Confinement was fine. As long as I wasn't dead, I could come and go freely within the Eastern Palace. The crown prince consort, though dissatisfied, didn't dare to object. Anxious about her legitimate son's injury, she swept her sleeve and left with her people. Xiaoxian and I were escorted back to Xiaoxiang Hall by the guards together. Along the way, the boy remained silent. I assumed his heart was chilled and, thinking to comfort him, said, "True sincerity is rare in the royal family. Once you're chilled too many times, you stop feeling the chill." As soon as the words left my mouth, the boy's eye corners abruptly reddened. Nguanchuan, walking beside me, looked at me with an expression that said it all. Realizing belatedly that the words were too harsh, I cleared my throat and tried to amend. "What I meant was, I've implicated you." Before I could finish, the boy's voice cut me off. His voice was very low, filled with guilt. I met his eyes, reddened with unease, and paused. After all, he was young, facing consecutive changes. At that moment, the boy was like a restless sea, waves crashing, fish scattering in panic, or like a swallow beaten down by rain, struggling against the endless raindrops yet forcing himself to remain composed. My heart of stone, hardened through training, felt pierced in one spot. I reached out and ruffled his hair. "Since you call me mother, then there's no talk of implication." Though I said it, I knew in my heart that this mother role probably wouldn't last much longer. But future matters could be considered later. The hair under my hand was soft, the touch pleasant. I kept stroking it. Xiaoxian was stunned for a moment, his eyes shifting. After a long pause, he lowered his head, his ear tips burning red as he called, "Mother." I smiled gently. Let's go back to the palace." "All right." Xiaoxiang Hall was heavily guarded. Those inside couldn't get out, those outside couldn't get in. It formed its own wall. Apart from someone delivering some food daily, there was no contact with the outside. Nguanchuan and Huozi couldn't smile anymore now. Their faces gloomy with worry every day. I didn't mind. These guards were nothing to Ningzhou. So Xiaoxian's martial arts lessons continued uninterrupted. During the day, specialized tutors came to teach him. Apart from being confined, his treatment wasn't too bad. Seasons changed, years passed. In the blink of an eye, 6 years went by. The crown prince's confinement order had long expired, but since he hadn't rescinded it, the guards remained. I heard the old emperor was seriously ill. At court, the crown prince and the third prince were rivals, undercurrents surging. The crown prince was busy with state affairs and rarely came to the inner residence. The crown prince consort still resented the past events. Taking advantage of the lax guard, she sent assassins to kill Xiaoxian. That night the moon was bright, the stars sparse. I faintly heard the clang of blades. Stepping out of my room to look, I saw Xiaoxian on the roof, his face cold, each move a killing blow. The assassin was shocked, leaping up to flee. Seeing this, Xiaoxian tapped his toes and gave chase. "Well done. Well done." I was watching the excitement when a sharp voice suddenly came from outside the gate. "His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived." Hearing this voice, I momentarily thought I misheard, but quickly realized. Not good. This couldn't be discovered by the Crown Prince. On the roof, Xiaoxian clearly heard it too, pausing mid-step, yet still chased after the person. Only when his figure vanished into the boundless night did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. But before my sigh fully escaped, the man in splendid robes was already before me. "What are you doing in the courtyard?" The man's voice held a trace of doubt. I smiled gently, lying without blushing. "Your subject hasn't seen your highness for a long time and thought it was an auditory hallucination, so I came to the courtyard to see." After I spoke, the crown prince before me didn't respond. Could this sound too fake? I stole a glance and met a pair of deep eyes, as if trying to suck in my very soul. After a moment, the man spoke in a low, husky voice. "You've suffered these years." "I haven't suffered. I've been quite happy." But naturally I couldn't say this out loud. I just pursed my lips and remained silent. But before my heart could fully settle, I heard the man speak again. "How is Xian'er now?" Thinking of Xiao Xian chasing after assassins earlier, I replied honestly. "He's very obedient." Diligent in martial arts chasing assassins, how is that not obedient?" Hearing this, the crown prince didn't detect anything amiss. He nodded slightly. "The confinement order is over. If you wish to go out, you may." All right. After this, silence lingered for a long time. Only after a good while did the crown prince speak again. "I have official duties. I'll come see you some other time." I readily agreed but didn't notice the complex emotion that flashed through the man's eyes. After the crown prince left, Xiao Xian returned. There were traces of blood on his clothes, but his expression remained unchanged. Clearly it was someone else's blood. 6 years had passed. He was no longer that helpless, fragile child. He had grown tall, acquired a young man's physique, reserved and steady, yet his eyes still shone brightly when they looked at me. Seeing me still standing in the courtyard, he quickly walked to my front, calling out happily, "Mother!" I caught him. The young man stared straight at me as if seeking praise. Sure, keep your voice down, is this something to boast about?" But not wanting to dampen his confidence, I forced myself to praise him. "Truly amazing." Hearing this, Xiao Xian's lips curved upward in a smile. He said softly, "This way I can protect you in the future." His words were faint, but I still heard them. My heart softened slightly. I immediately smiled. "Then, Mother will wait for your protection." Faced with my smile, he seemed embarrassed instead, turning his face away and giving a soft "This kid, he's quite endearing." But the good times didn't last. The political situation grew tense. Not long after, I received a secret letter from the third prince, delivered by Ning Zhou. Order Xiao Xian to assassinate the crown prince, cause chaos in the Eastern Palace, and ensure success. I stared at the letter, almost burning a hole through the paper with my gaze. Though I had expected Ning Zhou to report things to the third prince, I never imagined the third prince would trust my cheaply adopted son so much. I suddenly had the feeling of lifting a rock, only to drop it on my own foot, pacing back and forth in irritation. I just blurted it out casually. How could he take it seriously? I didn't sleep all night. Finally, I made my decision. The next night, a great fire suddenly broke out in Xiaoxiang Hall. Wanchuan was on night watch outside. Seeing the flames rise suddenly, she was terrified and hurriedly called people to extinguish it. Fire! Fire in Xiaoxiang Hall! The news quickly spread. But the crown prince was not in the Eastern Palace. The crown prince consort received the news but did not send anyone. I stood in the inner hall, the fire blazing fiercely. When Xiao Xian rushed over and saw me trapped in the sea of fire, his pupils violently contracted. "Mother!" He charged toward the fire, only to be held back fiercely by Wanchuan. "Your Highness, the fire is too fierce, you must not go in. Get away." Xiao Xian's eyes were bloodshot, frantic to charge and regardless. Seeing this, it felt as if a hand had pierced my chest, tearing at my heart. A suffocating dull pain tangled messily in my chest. Years spent together day and night, how could I not have feelings? I turned my face away, not looking at him, afraid that one more glance would make me reluctant. A beam crashed down, completely blocking the view from outside. But Xiao Xian's heart-wrenching cries still reached me. I hardened my heart, glanced at the body dressed identically to me lying on the ground, and left through a hidden door on the other side. When the crown prince received the news and rushed back to the Eastern Palace, the fire had already been extinguished. The crown prince consort arrived belatedly. Seeing Xiaoxian, his face covered in tears, her expression was unpleasant, but she didn't speak. Xiaoxiang Hall was a ruin. Nuanchuan and Huizue wept as if their hearts would break. The crown prince's footsteps halted abruptly, seemingly unable to believe it. He shouted sternly, "How could a fire break out for no apparent reason?" Nuanchuan cried until she was nearly breathless, choking as she answered, "This servant was on night watch outside. Madam was sleeping alone in the room. Later I smelled kerosene. Felt something was wrong. But it was too late, the fire had already started. The people who came to fight it were not enough. Madam she..." By the end, Nuanchuan's tears fell like rain. Unable to speak further, the crown prince's face darkened as he swept a glance at the crown prince consort, his eyes icy cold. This gaze made the crown prince consort shiver all over. She instinctively defended, "Your Highness, I was asleep at the time. I thought it was only a small fire." The crown prince's expression shifted several times, but in the end, he did not censure her further. Hiding behind the eaves, I watched the crown prince's cold profile from afar, an inexplicable feeling of loss washing over me. Admittedly, the death of a minor lateral consort meant nothing to him. So be it. The world would no longer have the crown prince's lateral consort Meng. Only Chiyue remained. I did not leave the eastern palace but hid secretly in the crown prince's bedchamber. As he entered, a cold arrow shot out with a swoosh. I had thought, given his martial skills, he should be able to dodge it, and we would struggle for a while. Unexpectedly, the arrow struck him squarely in the abdomen. Perhaps it was my imagination, but the man didn't look at the arrow in his abdomen. Instead, he stared fixedly in my direction. With one strike hitting its mark, I didn't linger, escaping through the window. The eunuch Fu, following the crown prince into the hall, saw his master attacked and screamed in terror, "Guards! Protect His Highness!" Chaos ensued. I took advantage of the chaos to escape the eastern palace. At the last moment I turned back unconsciously to look. The night sky blocked everything from view. But thinking of Xiao Xian's look of despair, my chest felt as if a heavy stone was pressing down on it, suffocating. The only way to break the deadlock and protect his position was through death. Perhaps everyone has their selfishness. In the end, I couldn't bear to use him. Thinking this, I turned to leave, silently saying in my heart, "Xianer, from now on you must walk your own path. Mother, I cannot be your mother." After saying this, I forcefully suppressed the surging emotions and vanished into the shadows. Unbeknownst to me, the man who had been hiding behind the eaves all along, his eyes reddened, stared intently at the direction I left. I completed the mission but did not return to the third prince's residence. News spread from the eastern palace. The crown prince was severely injured by an assassin. The lateral consort died in a fire. I went to a small town somewhat far from the capital and lived quietly in obscurity. To Xiao Qi, I had lost my usefulness and became a discarded pawn. Naturally, he wouldn't seek me. Fortunately, after years in the Eastern Palace, I was accustomed to a lazy life and didn't feel unaccustomed. This winter the old emperor passed away. Everyone expected the third prince to ascend the throne, but unexpectedly, the emperor's will appointed the crown prince as successor. The supposedly severely injured crown prince appeared before everyone. The third prince was executed on the spot. I wasn't surprised. That arrow wasn't fatal, it was just spreading false news. I had ultimately betrayed my master. I munched on a flatbread, washing it down with cold tea. Once full, I stepped out of the tea house. Outside a figure stood. Seeing who it was, I froze instantly. Under the setting sun, a 15 or 16-year-old youth dressed in black stared at me quietly. "Mother, how could you abandon your son?" His words stirred up 1,000 waves. People around us instantly cast various looks my way. My face changed color. Hastily grabbing Xiao Xian's sleeve, I pulled him to a secluded spot, scolding in a low voice. "You? How did you find me here? Now you should be the second prince. Instead of fighting for immense wealth and honor, why come looking for me?" But Xiao Xian only gazed deeply at me and said softly, "I know mother dislikes the deep palace struggles. I specially asked father for a fiefdom and requested to leave the capital." My heart trembled. I widened my eyes. "You? I wanted to ask, aren't you avenging your birth mother?" But the words wouldn't leave my mouth. The crown prince consort, no now Empress Dowager, had a powerful maternal clan. Even the new emperor couldn't easily punish her, let alone Xiaoxian, still unstable in his foundation. In the deep palace, one misstep meant utter defeat. Retreating outside, one could observe coldly from the sidelines, seeking opportunities. With this thought, I took the initiative to grasp his sleeve. "Let's go." Seeing me agree, the originally anxious person's expression softened gradually. The new emperor gave Xiaoxian a fiefdom on the border, a place with yearly battles and harsh conditions. Fortunately, Xiaoxian's martial prowess was outstanding. He repeatedly achieved military feats. Before even 20 years old, he became the youngest war god of our dynasty. The new emperor was overjoyed, bestowing endless gold and silver. But the Empress Dowager couldn't sit still. She secretly instructed the Crown Prince Xiaojing to bribe the grain official, withholding provisions, attempting to trap Xiaoxian to death on the battlefield. Unexpectedly, the affair was exposed. Within a few short months, clique formation, bribery and imperial examinations, disregard for human lives. Case after case, following the clues, uncovered a series of major scandals. When the wall starts to crumble, everyone pushes. The Empress Dowager's maternal clan was annihilated overnight. The crown prince was deposed. The new emperor had only 2 sons. Overnight, Xiaoxian became the hottest new crown prince candidate. While packing Xiaoxian's luggage for his return to the capital, I couldn't help but warn. The palace isn't as free as the outside world. Now that you will be crown prince, you must be diligent and love the people. Won't you return to the palace with me? He suddenly grasped my wrist as I packed, his gaze deep. I looked at him in surprise, smiling. With what identity? As a risen corpse? I fear it would frighten your father to death. Besides, I've found something else I wish to do. I used to be a chess piece for others without my own thoughts. Now free, my desires gradually clarified. I smiled gently, not hiding my edge. I will guard this small city for you from now on. Don't underestimate me. Xiaoxian stared at me in a daze. Seeing my resolve was firm, a shadow crossed his eyes. Ultimately, he didn't insist. All right. He swallowed the words, "Father always knew you weren't dead." The convoy back to the capital set off the next day. I stayed where I was, watching the man's figure recede. Suddenly thinking of something, I lowered my eyelids, a wry smile tugging at my lips. Perhaps he had long forgotten me. The morning sun rose over the small city, brilliant, bright. At the same time, on the capital's city wall, a man in dragon robes stood there. Sensing something, he gazed into the distance. Occasionally the wind rises, hoping it brings back an old friend. Xiao Yi's side story. When Xiao Yi was 14, the third prince pushed him into the water. He wasn't good at swimming. Icy lake water flooded his mouth and nose. He struggled to call for help, but no one was on the shore. Just as he thought he would die, a slender figure leaped into the water like a fish, straining to push him ashore. He had choked on a lot of water, his vision blurry. He only vaguely made out it was a girl. The girl's voice was pleasant. "Hey, how did you fall in the water? Judging by your fine clothes, I saved you, you ought to reward me." It was the first time someone had been so blunt with him. He was momentarily stunned. His shoulder was suddenly shaken. He regained consciousness, opened his eyes wide, and clearly saw the girl's cat-like eyes, lively and clever. Instinctively patting himself all over but finding nothing, he was immediately embarrassed, his ear tips reddening. My things all fell into the water." Hearing this, the girl was visibly disappointed, looking as if the rescue had been in vain. Faced with anyone else, he would have scolded them. But at that time he couldn't utter a word, just stared at her. He was about to ask which family's daughter she was when he heard someone approaching. "Your Highness." In the moment he turned his head. When he looked back, the girl had vanished without a trace. As if everything just now had been a dream. He returned to the palace and ordered people to find whoever had been by the lake that day. But there was never a trace. As time passed, he gave up. As the crown prince, the emperor selected a noble-born crown princess consort for him. The Empress Dowager chose a beautiful favored concubine for him. He didn't particularly like them but didn't refuse either. But he never expected to encounter her again at a palace banquet. A eunuch told him she was Vice Minister Meng's daughter, Meng Qiu. Her identity was full of suspicions, yet he still permitted her to enter the Eastern Palace as a lateral consort. He knew Vice Minister Meng was the third prince's man. From that day, he guessed she was probably the third prince's man too. But she had completely forgotten him, or perhaps he had been too disheveled that day, utterly different from his usual well-dressed self. He was both joyful and suspicious that she came to take his life. He also feared that favoring her would bring her trouble from the crown princess consort. Weighed down by these considerations, he chose to treat her coldly. Until the favorite concubine's incident. She protected Xian'er, that child. He secretly planned to let her raise Xian'er, so that after ascending the throne, he could help her secure her position in the palace. Unexpectedly, Jing'er had an accident, and the crown princess consort made trouble. With no alternative, he confined the mother and son. 6 years apart. When he stepped into Xiaoxiang Hall, he saw a figure flash over the eaves from afar. Its build incredibly similar to Xian'er. In that moment his heart felt a jumble of emotions. She was truly good at teaching children. She taught my perfectly good son to become a wall-scaling assassin. But facing her honest and simple appearance, he ultimately couldn't bear to expose it and casually agreed. Forget it, forget it. Martial arts weren't necessarily a bad thing after all. Later, he was busy fighting for the throne with the third prince. Exhausted mentally and physically, he suddenly heard about the fire in Xiaoxiang Hall. His expression instantly changed. Thinking she had failed her mission and been discarded by the third prince, he dropped all official duties and rushed over. Though inwardly tormented, he dared not show a trace on his face. He ordered people to take good care of Xiao Xian and returned to his bedchamber with heavy steps. Unexpectedly, just as he entered the hall, an icy sting pierced his abdomen. He didn't look down, just stared blankly at the person in the shadows. At this moment he felt relief. Fortunately, she wasn't dead. She just came to kill him. It was just that her technique had gotten rusty. A mere arrow couldn't kill him. He allowed the guards to let her escape, and after ascending the throne, permitted Xiao Xian to leave the capital. He knew Xian'er would surely go looking for her. He secretly followed behind after leaving the palace. Sure enough, he saw her again. A smile graced her lips, unlike the meekness she feigned before him. She was much more unrestrained. Probably this was her true nature. During those years in the Eastern Palace, suppressing her true self must have been truly hard for her. His heart felt bitter, but he didn't reveal himself, only speaking in a hoarse voice. Let's go back. These days he recalled endlessly. If that day he fell into the water upon learning her identity, he had taken her from the third prince back to the Eastern Palace and named her crown princess consort, perhaps everything would have been different. Alas, things in this world are always fraught with mishaps and coincidences.